Hello, everybody. Super quick intro before we get started. The audio in this episode is not the best. Practice makes perfect, as they say. Did not, somehow we had the audio interface going like last time, and it wasn't correctly linked to the program. So it did record everything, but it recorded off the computer. So I listened back. The quality is actually pretty good considering. I'm going to try to fuck with it in post, maybe clean it up a little bit, but it's actually not too bad. So I really hope that's not anything that offsets anyone from wanting to listen to this conversation, because it was really insightful. And I think we both got to say some things that we wanted to say about the Capitol and what's going on, and I think it was a good opportunity for rational, intelligent conversation to have about that. So I really hope everybody listens. Aubrey, he was in town, kind of just randomly popped in, kind of wanted to do a podcast, and he's never really in town. And I was gonna start the season originally on January 24th, I believe, 23rd, with 4T Breezy. That's gonna be an interesting guest, but and that's gonna be live. But I just kind of decided to throw this up due to recent events, all the craziness going on. I think it's important to comment. Maybe it's not important to comment. That's kind of what we talk about, how it's not important to comment. But I guess for those of you who have been wanting to know what the fuck we had to say about the Capitol, this is a good opportunity for you guys to listen to that. So without further ado, here's the episode.
I was just talking to my roommate the other day just about like animals and like pets. I was like, man, like who came up with the concept of pets? Like I feel like having a pet like a dog or a cat, like you're literally taking this animal that has like its own natural instinct and natural habitat and be like, no, don't do what you do as an animal, damn it. It's like, we know you pee places and shit places, but you go shit here, pee here, and we're not gonna give you attention this amount of time. It's like it's funny just like how it's like domesticating an animal to like a human living, and it's just like, wow, it's just funny. I always just thought about it like, it's like, who thought of this concept of pets? Like, was it Christopher Columbus or something? Like, it makes sense. And foreshadow. It's like, we can do this to a dog, guys. Imagine people.
He annihilated the Native Americans and made pets. Another horrific.
Right. It's like nobody talked about the pet story, what he did to these damn pets.
Do you ever wonder if like if the dogs and all the domesticated animals outlive us, like if we would give them like almost an evolutionary step, like they'd be like more advanced in some way? Like
I've never thought about that. Like they'd be able to like talk to each other.
Yeah, like dogs outliving us versus like wolves, like however many years ago. Like probably a huge evolutionary difference if they,
Oh yeah, I never thought about that. Like 100 or 1,000, 2,000 years from now, like what dogs would like be like.
Yeah, exactly.
They probably know to go shit and pee outside by themselves and like have like 3 square meals a day and stuff like that.
Damn.
And like some of them's like, oh no, that'd probably be bad. Damn, I feel sorry for animals. They're gonna take on all our traits. Like you guys get political and shit. Like black spotted dogs this way. You're all fucking brown. Go this way. Hey, this is like, no, I don't think I'd want to fuck. We don't want to fuck with animals like that. I was like, man, if we were better human beings, yeah. But I was like, man, them animals gonna like go through the same shit we went: racism, sexism. Gonna tell the dogs to stay home and get the food ready, whatever that looks like for a dog. It's like, man, they're gonna go through all that shit. It probably won't be evolution, or it could be the other way around. They just see us and be like, damn, these humans are fucked up. Like, we're going to be different as dogs in the future. Like, imagining dogs like 11 years from now, like, just laughing at us. Like, in 2015, they had race issues. Like, what a primitive race.
Fuck 2015. They're going to look back at 2020, 2021 and be like, what those motherfuckers did to themselves.
These barbarians. They probably have like a lot of commentary on the dogs that had to like outlive that shit
right.
too. It's like, during the quarantine, like the dogs ate less.
They'll be like the Holocaust survivors.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's a man.
Shit.
That's a perspective.
Why did I open up Photoshop?
What animals think about COVID season? That's a perspective I like to write about.
The real perspective.
The real.
Do they even have that brain capability?
Yeah, right. And let's just say, okay, 1,000 years from now, let's say the brain capabilities
are
different.
It really could. It could over that amount of years. That amount of years. It's really weird. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's funny how we just got to that off the facts.
It's fun. Well, we're kind of doing a surprise episode here.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
With Aubs.
Yeah, man. That's kind of what it is, because I already knew it was going to be up here, and I just kind of threw that idea at you.
No, I like it.
Yeah.
It's like I was saying, it's definitely been a while since I've had somebody in the studio on a podcast. So this is a lot of fun. It's and like I've told you before, you're a very smart, intelligent guy, and open-minded, and I feel like you're a good person to have a conversation with. So, what other person to have on to? Man,
I'm an introvert, and I sit with myself a lot, so I have a lot of time to just think about shit. So
you know what?
It's like whenever I get to those places, I'm like, tell my friends, I get that like you sound like you've been like inside by yourself for a month. But then like on podcasts like this, like it kind of just feels like I'm in a safe space to just like spew those like ponderings wherever I can.
It's a natural zone. Yeah, it's like a rant that, because I won't lie. The statistics on my YouTube videos, it's not like everyone's watching the entire 2 hours of the podcast.
Yeah.
So it gets to a point where you feel like you kind of have open space to kind of just say whatever, and it could be, I guess, dissected and interpreted a certain way. But it's just a free form space.
Exactly.
It feels humbling and open.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that said too, like I was thinking, it's funny you bring that up. I was thinking about this like last week, because I kind of just I was thinking about it in terms of like how I make art, and just kind of like my approach to like my approach to like being business minded when it comes to art. Like I just like reaching out to people who I like mess with, and like if I like you, like I want to collab with you, and like that's how I kind of just build myself up as an artist. But like that's not a very popular way to do it. Yeah. So like I was kind of just thinking about like how like I'm kind of like unique in that sense of just like I know that like I won't have a lot of people like listening to my music. I don't really like ever seeing that, but the thing that matters is that the people who do listen, they'll listen and like they'll really be engaged with it. So like
exactly
with like 2 hour podcasts, like there are like I've listened to like long episodes of your podcast and all that, and like it's because like I'm really engaged and like I'm really just kind of like interested in the conversation, and like it does something for me, like listening to those conversations and like out of that, I'm like, whenever people come to me like that, when it comes to like art, I'm like, oh wow, like this is why like I'm able to like, this is why I like making art the way I do, because like it's a quality over quantity thing, like having genuine people like be a fan of you is kind of like being a fan of your stuff is like cool, and like even if it's 5 or 50 compared to 50,000, like I know Joe Rogan has some fans like this wilding, who are always wilding. Like I see his IG and I'm like, dude, like it must feel bad to have like fucking idiots as like these guys' conversation. They're all mad about political things and all this. Like, man, like, I know you can't pick at the end of the day, but I welcome anybody like listen to art, but like, man, like I want like fucking idiots who are oh like pro this, pro Trump. I wanna. Well, it's just like, man, like I can't. Yeah, I'd rather not.
I agree. I don't think I would ever want to reach that status.
No,
of being that famous or getting that many listens, because you're under a microscope.
And people are so entitled, man. Like, I kind of think about I think about like during the George Floyd stage like last year. Like I was like really paying attention to like stuff happening on Twitter when I had one, and like there was a situation with this rapper No Name. I might have mentioned this last time. I think I mentioned it maybe. But this rapper No Name in Chicago, like a young artist, really dope in the artistry, and like her voice is really important. I think like as a black female, really important person. But she made this tweet that said like, "We're your $10 million making artists. We need them to say something on Twitter about George Floyd." And she was aiming it at Kendrick and J. Cole and artists of that sort. And like with that considered, I'm like, yo, like these humans don't have to like tweet us to like let us know what's happening in their brain. Like that's the most like entitled fucking idea.
Yeah.
Just because I don't tweet, it's like during the George Floyd shit, like I didn't even have Facebook and Twitter at the time. I deleted my Twitter, stuff like that. Like I'd wish somebody would like have the audacity to be like, hey, Aubrey, like you need to say something on your Twitter or Facebook about what's happening right now in the space because everybody's doing it. It's just like, no, like I'm not that reactionary. Like, with that said, it doesn't mean that I'm not having the conversations in my head or with people that I'm close to. Like,
exactly. And
you know?
That's what I was going to say. Like, if you are provoking that person that may have that conversation and say that thing, why don't you do that? Why don't you know? Because all you can really do at the end of the day is control yourself.
Exactly.
That's always my like. I think the people that really try to go out of their way and like police people and like you have to say this and you have to do this. Like, you know, fuck you.
For what? Yeah.
Yeah, like for your own gratification to like feel empowered. Essentially.
Exactly.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and it's such a crazy thing because like it's such a common like that having that brain like kind of like movement of just like entitlement. Like it's pretty common like when you're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, like just seeing people who are so like who feel so entitled to tell people like what they should do with their lives or all this on Instagram. Like, wow, like this is what it looks like when you like are so well, like when you work so hard at your craft as an artist and have people follow you. You have all these people with all this entitlement and shit reaching out to you and like telling you what you need to do with your life. I'm like, I never want to be that. Like, fuck that.
Fuck
like
that.
I was just like, I'd rather just like do what I do now, have fun with it, and not have like homie in Maryland telling me like who I should vote for, like why I shouldn't criticize this or that. It's just like that's none of your business. Like, you know.
So I don't know how you think about this, but I think in a way that's almost racist. Because you're like you're expecting someone because of their because of the color of their skin to make this make this statement. And it's like you don't see the hypocrisy in that.
Yeah, and you kind of keep people kind of like almost compartmentalized to that space of like being in that trauma and anger and rage. Like for me, like after I like did like a lot of my like therapy, went to like a few therapy sessions this past year during the fall. Like one of the things that I did was like, man, like I'm not gonna like involve myself in like a race conversation if I don't have to, like, because I know what that does to my brain. Like I get to have this conversation, and like in the conversation I may like take a question that was like a meaningful, genuine question, but felt antagonistic. Like I'm gonna take that some sort of way. That's gonna be a trauma trigger, and then that's gonna be exhausting, and then that's gonna keep me in this brain of like, oh fuck these people, fuck all that, and like so like I've stopped having that conversation. But like with that, the challenge was like when people came to me like on Facebook and Instagram wanting somebody to tell them what they should do in this time or like how they should think or like what I think about what's going on. It's just like, man, like honestly, I just don't want to live in that place. Like I got a perspective of like what's happening, but I don't really feel having a conversation. And like again too, like you have those people who have the conversation just because they want to like prove somebody right, or like prove somebody that they're right about something, you know.
I think there is something to be said for like, like white guilt in a way, or like people feeling like they have like almost like they feel good. Yeah. Like it's not even about like they really care. They're just like, oh, I feel so good. Like being pro-black.
Right. Like, it's funny. It's funny that you say that because I'm fucking happy you said that because I have a story that just happened yesterday.
Tell it.
Oh my gosh. So I went on I have this bad habit of going to, like, whenever I see a Barnes & Noble, I just book binge. And, like, I had one of those days yesterday. I had a meeting at, like, the mall and, like, was walking around and walked past Barnes & Noble and just caught that, like, itch. And I went there, like, buying books and stuff. So I go to, like, I like reading a lot of, like, philosophy books and, like, social science. So I was in the social science section looking for, like, books particularly on, like, maybe the history of black women and all that. So I'm sitting here looking through all these books. And this white woman who was about my age kind of walks through here, looks at me. I feel her looking at me. She looks at her friend, looks at me, kind of walks towards this book, and she's like, Martha, I found a book on white fragility, and just looks at me again. And I'm like, I know what's going on. This is weird. Good fucking, you want a gold star for being a good white person? Like, and like she just kept looking at me. And, like, you could tell, like, she was looking in the section that I was looking at and trying to spark some conversation, like, in some kind of manner. I'm like, oh, this is fucking weird. Like, I just came here for a book, man. like, fuck. It's like, I just feel weird because I know something's going to happen, but, like, I can leave the situation. So I just kind of got up, walked away slowly, and just walked to the anime section until she left.
What section can I go to?
And then it's funny because when I got on my books, she was in line in front of me. And, like, she just looked back, and so she looked back behind her, too, who was in line, just looked back again. and just kind of like turned away. And I'm like, yo, like, I don't think she realized what she's doing. I think she's just get caught in this place of like wanting some kind of validation because I know what books she buy.
Yeah,
and she's like, this is weird, man. Like, don't do it because like, like do it because like it's good and cool and like you're getting some kind of knowledge out of that. Don't look for some kind of like fucking
yeah. I can't stand people like that.
you get a black star. With this star, you can go. I don't know.
Where are you looking for an N-word pass or something? It's like that the end goal.
It's like, you want a T-shirt, like merch. You want to be part of the underground Black Lives Matter group, the Quad City chapter or something? Like, she's looking for some kind of invite to something, you know. And that's the thing too. Like, I feel like a lot of people like during this, like you're probably like, I don't know if you, like you thought this too, but like even during a lot of this like George Floyd stuff and just like the stuff that we've dealt with like from the get go, really for a long time, like has kind of given people like more of a like I think a lot of people have like been getting behind what's been happening, not because like just because it's a good thing. It may be out of one of the motives could be like it's a good thing, but I think it's also like they kind of see like an exciting edginess to it almost. Have you ever like
so I actually have a theory. I was listening to something very recently. So, you know, like I'm not necessarily talking about the people who were at the Capitol, but people who are more right-minded are actually very anti-cop right now because they're going into these businesses and closing them down.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like in that way, there's actually like right now, I think that's like maybe not Black Lives Matter necessarily, but a lot of the energy in Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Like just, you know, like the police, I think both sides are now clearly seeing police that there is a huge problem with our police departments. And like there needs to be some serious changes to that. I don't really know what those changes are. I think there's some ideas thrown out there that I don't necessarily agree with, but I do kind of see, you know, the pros and cons of everything. Like I don't think the idea of having a social worker with a cop is a bad idea. I think that could be good, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that too. Like the whole like kind of like obviously in like knowing the history of like policing and all that, knowing that it started with like a pretty oppressive system like back in Egypt and shit like that. Like I understand like the history of it, but like even now, like I'm kind of wary of the whole kind of like abolish police kind of ism too, because I'm like, man, like at the end of the day, you really do like need cops. I was having this conversation with somebody about like whether they think that I think cops should not be in the schools and all that, and I'm like, hell yeah, cops should be in the schools. Like, do you not see how many crazy kids be shooting up these schools? It's like, what the fuck? It's like, who do you think will stop that? Like, they don't let they ain't gonna let us have like our guns in the school. So like, the only person is like the cops are like, it's just like, understand it, but like I think there's a lot more nuance to that conversation of like how policing should be, how police should be like kind of like held accountable for stuff, like how that system should alter and shift, like kind of shift a little bit more to like be more humane, be more understanding of the person. But like I don't think like you should just like toss all cops out, like just toss that out altogether.
You know, because all you're gonna do is you're gonna just create something that's just like that, that's worse.
Exactly.
Like what was Chaz in Portland? Did you hear about that when they sanctioned off the Black Lives Matter, right? Yeah, maybe not Black Lives Matter. I think it was more Antifa side, but they sanctioned off like 12 blocks, and they they had no cops, and that was like they called it Chaz. It was like their own little place that had no U.S. cops, and people actually got murdered. Like,
okay, I have heard of that method actually. Yeah, I have. I had a friend tell me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucked up, man. Like, I think people that have the extreme anarchy type idea of like completely burning everything, like, should really look at that. Like, that's a modern day example that just happened this last year. I mean, it's human psychology. It's like Lord of the Flies. It's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's no matter what. Like it's no matter like what kind of system you think is going to change out. Like we're going to replace that with something, and it's always going to be. It's gonna be just as ratchet as you said. Like, you know, like it's just like it's again like I just think that like for police officers now, like I feel like they should just look for like police officers who like. Like people who like have got off of like retreats from like Buddhist retreats or something, and have these people be cops, and have and have these guys like, oh well, I would never harm somebody unwrongfully, but I will shoot somebody in the leg.
Exactly.
No. But what you were saying, there's something funny about what you were saying though earlier, just about this whole thing of like how like these businesses, like people who are like more kind of like he said right wing people who are like a lot more like kind of like the kind of like having this tension with the cops
Mm-hmm.
and like because of the businesses and all that. Like I feel like it's funny because I kind of see it in the light of like everything happened like with the Capitol and all that. Like where like I think people sometimes it's funny to see how like people are so quick to be against something when that thing is against them. But when they see that thing against somebody else, they're like, oh yeah, maybe you should do this or that, or don't do this or that. Like with what we say with the Capitol, man, like it's such a like there's such a big irony to this whole thing. Like it's the biggest irony ever to like because like these people who are so about their country, their freedoms and all this, attacking the people who are going to be giving them their freedoms and all this, and the other.
It's true lunacy.
And not only that, these people who are doing it in a very violent manner would look back at people like Kaepernick who was on a knee and will say like, hey, you can't be against our country like that. That's inappropriate. That's very like offensive. Be on your knee. But these motherfuckers
I did see that
now like just wrecking house. I'm like, wow, like you got this is interesting. Like I've been looking at this as just a big case study. I'm like, you guys are really a case study right now. Like how quick the human brain can just switch its values like that. Like you don't value the U.S. Like you don't because if you did, you'd be consistent in that. It looks different, you know. And it's just like wow, like.
I really do hope that Donald Trump goes to prison.
I was just talking to somebody about this. Yeah, man.
That what he, I maybe have been someone, who's maybe never taken like an extreme attack on Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, neither have I.
But what that whole thing was just so awful.
Yeah.
For anyone to do, let alone someone as a president, to see someone do that to our country and then applaud them for his own narcissistic benefit. It's insane. It's insane. It's crazy. I can't like it. It boils my blood, and the effects that are going to happen from this are, I think, they're going to last for a long time.
Seriously, man. It's definitely going to leave its mark for sure. I was just talking to somebody about that, but it's just like about like seeing how like he should definitely get arrested for the shit that he did.
I hope he does. I really
it's just like it's. For me, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't, just because, like, like it's even though with Biden and like Harris, like now kind of like being like in the spots that they are, I'm like, man, like I hope it happens, but I think I've just built up so much cynicism. I'm like, you know what? They might just let him go. They might just give him a slap on the wrist. Like, there's no telling how we handle shit anymore.
Because that's the problem, right? Because if this kind of goes into them like banning him everywhere. Like, is it deserving? Yes. But, like, you also set a precedent where, like, the people who are, like, on his side and really with him are going to see that as a reactionary, like, oh, of course they're doing that. You know what I mean? And it's just going to make them spiral out.
That's what I'm saying. Further. Like, yeah, because, them Trumpites, they go hard. They're not going to stop just because he's in prison. Like,
there were 2.5 million people.
I'm saying.
In D.C.
Like, that's crazy.
It's insane. This isn't like... You can't, like, you don't even need to say it's, like, a good thing. You just have to acknowledge, like, there's something there where there's a large group of people who are, like, pissed about something. And you can't just ignore that and block every viewpoint online that has that. You're going to really fuck things up in the long term.
Yeah, exactly. Man, it's 2 million. I didn't realize it was that much.
2.5 million.
Man, that is crazy.
All the guys that were, in the pictures, the guy on the desk and they got arrested today.
Oh, did they?
Mm-hmm. Finally. They're probably all looking at 10 years at least.
Sheesh, that is crazy. Well, it's just like that's given. It's just like you didn't think that was gonna happen. You're gonna put
walk around with that mask and like taking selfies. Like, what the fuck are you thinking? Like live streaming it?
It was crazy when they were telling me there was cops taking selfies with these people like in there just. Like,
for real?
Yeah. Like when my home let me.
That's insane.
It's just like crazy, man. Like.
So what do you think? Have you seen the video footage of them letting people in?
I saw one video of like people like a officer lifting a barricade out the way and like letting people come in, but that's all the extent that I like really saw. For the most part, I saw them just like making like makeshift ladders with bed, like with with the bed shit, whatever.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Did you see that at all?
No, I didn't see the.
Actually, hold on, you gotta see this because this is funny as shit. I just showed this to my one of my homies the other day. There's this lady who was scaling the wall, and she fell out of this quicker than I fell out of relationships. Just like that. Like I know that hurt. I'm like you look like you're at least.
God damn.
You look like you're at least late 40s, early 50s, and like I know them bones don't hold up like
no,
they did when you're 20.
Jesus.
Like you probably broke some shit. Like I'm like, ugh, like
I saw conflicting footage. I saw a footage where there were cops like pushing against it and they were lifting it, and then I've seen footage where they are opening the gate and like even motioning people to come in, and then there's like other where they have a stick. I think what happened, I'm kind of just honestly thinking, spitballing this. Maybe there was a divide in the police department. Like maybe there were certain orders given, but some of the cops like, no, fuck this, you know. And some of them are just like, all right, MAGA, get in here.
That is true. That is true. I did think about that too, because like I have seen like all like.
It's all so weird. It's all bizarre. Like nobody really knows what the fuck happened. It's like, God.
Like there's somebody being let in over here. There's people over here getting maced and all this, and then
I think there's 3 different entrances to the White House, from what I remember.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that was like a whole thing too. So, you know, you have different, you know, people going to different entrances. It's interesting to see like what shots they got. I saw a lot of them in the front, but there was nothing in the back because there were those entrances that people were going through.
That is crazy.
4 people died.
Yeah, I just see that. And it's like, man, like, and this might be like a very, whatever, I'll fucking say it. But, because my sister was talking to me about it the other day, and like, I was talking to my sister about it. Like how like these people who like died, like, you saw their family members kind of like talking about them, and like maybe there's a wrong assumption on my part now that I say it, like, but like you saw these like excerpts from their like family saying like this person who died care about their country. They were like the most genuine, loving, kind person. They would never hurt anybody. I'm like, that's a fucking lie. Like, I was like, and like again, I was like, I said that's why I said like I might be making a wrong assumption there by saying that, but I'm like, for the most part, like if I wanted to bank my chances on like this human being, which again, like assumption, like they knew why they were there and they knew what they were doing and they knew what they were wanting to do while they were there, you know, like this person wasn't just, it's funny how like these people who like make these assertions, whenever there's assertions made by like, let me think, Philando Castile or like Breonna Taylor, like who, Breonna Taylor, we use her for example, like this person like who worked as an EMT and all this and was a good person, like you saw people like, attack her, be like, oh no, this person was a good person. Like her boyfriend was a drug user and she moved his drugs. Like fuck her and this and the other. And it's crazy like how sometimes these people are the same ones who like are looking at these deaths and like, wow, this person died an honorable death. I was like, you're fucking lying. Like you just hold us to the same standard that you. Like, like we just that.
Yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy going around. Well, and you know that's such a biased take to get like you're gonna talk to their family, like you know, of course they are gonna seem nice, but. You know, it is kind of interesting. I wonder how much, like, how brainwashed those... They're obviously not intelligent for doing that. I mean, anyone with any real intelligence would realize the ramifications of what they're doing, how much time they're going to get.
Yeah, if you really care about your country, you know how, like, and care about, like, it being a place where everybody has these rights and all this. Like, you're not going to attack a Capitol building. Like, you're going to think of other ways of doing things that are...
other logical, non-harmful
exactly
doing things.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, overall, just a fucking horrible day.
Yeah, you know what's funny too? Like I've been waiting for this too. Like I've low key have been waiting for like guys like Ben Shapiro or like Steve Crowder to say something because like you know how quick they are to like jump on like protests and riots. I'm like, okay, like this is gonna really prove to me if they're like people who like really are about like talking about the honest truth about things.
Yeah. Or
if they're just about a side. And I've just been waiting for them to say anything.
I did see a Shapiro clip today. He did. He was talking about the censorship because I think that's what they're getting on is the Trump censorship with Twitter and Facebook.
And that's what I think. It's just like why are they getting on that, but they won't say anything about what's happening. That's almost like you know, like true. It's just funny. It's just like you're talking about the censorship. Yeah, that's an issue, but like. There's still a side to that. That's a very right kind of like right-winged idea a little bit, you know. But you're not going to talk about this thing that's being carried out by your homies because you're trying to keep this like team mentality, you know. And it's just like wow, like this is what for me discounts these kind of people as like people to really trust about like things about of any sort, because like they're only gonna like talk about things or have discussions or like have these like YouTube videos or interviews if it only gets a 3-point for the like if it's only like maybe a 3-pointer is to a team. Like if it's not gonna give them a score for their team, they're not gonna talk about it. Or if it goes against them, like I've just been waiting on them to say something about like Steven Crowder, like when the protests were happening, the riots were happening in Minneapolis. He was there the next day criticizing it, recording with like, oh, what the heck is this?
Like he was actually in Minneapolis.
I have it on my phone. It's just, what the heck is this, guys? What the heck? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Like that's fucked up. Like you shouldn't be burning down buildings. Like I'm not with that either. But like, bring the same energy to your team now. Like you dudes are doing the same thing. Where are you at? Like, guys, Capitol. Like I'm just waiting for them to say something, and like if they don't, it's just all more of a case. Like man, like this is what it looks like when you're just like living in that ego of just like seeming like a smart, intelligent person. Not to say that they have like a lot of academic knowledge, but like just showing that you're just using it for a benefit for you and your team.
Yeah, that I won't lie. Those are definitely two people that I think I would have listened to a lot more a couple years ago. But Steven Crowder, I can't stand him anymore. He his whole view on pot was like just absolutely. He went on JRE and he just said some crazy biased, ridiculous.
I did see that.
He was just like. He was acting like a baby. He's like, "Whoa, you have your system here, and I have mine." It's like, shut the fuck up! You're making yourself look like the worst guest he's ever had.
Joe Rogan wasn't happening too. He's like, "Shut up, you fuck!" I'm like, he's really
dude. Don't trash his pot. He gets like.
I was gonna say,
yeah, dude.
I was like, he's about it. I was like, okay, Joe.
When he bash people for the drugs, they get fucking pissed, man.
Yeah, and it's just funny. Like it's just like Steve Crowder, like he's just one of those guys, like again very academic brained, like which is different from like intelligence. I like to explain to people like academic.
There's different kinds of intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. He has like a lot of academia, which is still like one sided for the most part. So he's a very smart person, but he's always still using his like voice or like academia for a team. Like okay, like you're not ever gonna see him like criticize. Again, like I don't like. Hopefully, I mean, we probably won't see him criticize anybody about what's happening at the Capitol because he knows like those are his homies.
Yeah, exactly.
That's his team jersey. You don't ditch your team jersey.
Exactly. Ben Shapiro, I remember I stopped listening when George Floyd happened because he had a very cynical take on that. He was just talking about like I was the subject of most anti-Semitism last year or what. Like, dude, like that's really what you're focusing on right now. Like,
I think he got bullied in high school. Like,
oh yeah.
Like I think like my whole thing about Ben, like I don't even take him serious because like I feel like he's one of those. He just sounds like one of those dudes. Like he was just bullied a bunch in high school because you used to just mouth off smart shit to people and they just beat your ass for it.
Yeah.
And like now you have this platform where you're getting back at everybody who was like, guys, like that's what y'all get for beating me up when I was making these points in AP history and you beat me up, put me in the trash can. I'm like, man, this guy Ben is just hurt. He needs some friends. He needs some hey, man, like, it's okay. They about to put you in the trash can at 16. It's okay. You're 26 now, man. You good. Like, just let it go.
You're doing way better than they are financially.
It's just like, I feel like he's just, it's just something about his posture. It's just something like I would just take my chances on his posture. It's just like, man, he was bullied. He's holding some bully trauma.
He is so hardcore. One of the funniest things I ever saw, Dave Rubin.
I've heard of the name.
So he's kind of in that, like, I hate to say the intellectual dark web because I think that was more popular phrase like 4 years ago. But they've all kind of like. So there's a guy, Eric Weinstein. You should really look him up. He's like probably one of the smartest men, like walking the face of the earth. He's like a physicist, mathematician, like just really, really smart guy. He has his podcast and he invented this term, the intellectual dark web. It has like people like him, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro is considered in that circle, but I mean, I think that's a little hazy. Steven Crowder is also even like interacting with people kind of in that circle. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't consider Eric Weinstein right-winged at all, but I mean, there has been kind of a lot of attention speculating that it's like a radical right-wing group, which just isn't true. Anyways, what was my point with that?
The intellectual dark. You were explaining the intellectual dark web.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that is like kind of the vibe that I'm going with all this kind of stuff. Like really, like have you heard of the concept of the red pill?
I think I have. Like expand on it.
So it was a documentary. So it initially started with a documentary about feminism.
Okay.
And it was like it was an interesting take about like how this like there's this really radical movement of feminism where it's like almost like a female power, and this feminist actually went to a men's. They're like basically the opposite feminists. They're like a men's right activist group, and they're not great people either. They
that's such a contradiction. Men's rights activists is like, you guys are cool, bro. Like it's funny.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. They do compare a lot of different statistics, like the amount of men that die in war and while working, and it's like astronomical compared to women.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I guess it's just an interesting theory. The one thing that they point out that really boils my blood is the whole thing with men parental stuff. They were citing cases where women would poke the condom and like get a kid, like stuff like that, and like he would still have to pay like for everything, and like, just stories like that where like it's not as black and white as people make it out to be. Yeah, essentially. So I guess that's kind of where the origination of the red pill came.
Okay, huh?
I kind of danced around that whole thing. I was kind of getting off track.
Yeah, no, I've never heard about that. Red pill. I've heard about. I didn't know it was called. I gotta know it was called the red pill. Like the red pill has that like narrative behind it.
I don't know what my point was with that.
I don't either. You know what? That's okay. It's okay. Red pill. That sounds like drugs. It sounds like war on drugs. Let's talk about the war on drugs. Or the war on mugs. Actually, the war on mugs.
Perfect segue. Let's talk about
right.
Actually, before we talk about your album, though, I'm going to refill water.
Oh yeah, do that.
Let's take a really quick break.
Yeah, let's do that for sure. Okay, for sure. Right, let's do that.
Okay, so my point: the intellectual dark web. We're getting back here, by the way.
If you guys
haven't realized that by now. Dave Rubin, he's kind of considered in that circle, and there was a interview that he did with Ben Shapiro where because Dave Rubin's gay, he's a conservative, like really likes Trump, but I think still maybe even likes Trump, which is, like in gay, and so and Ben Shapiro's very anti-gay, like he's like because of his religion, he just doesn't like it at all.
Yeah,
and like not necessarily doesn't like it, but he's very against it. So like he was just asking like these really weird questions, like, would you buy me a cake for me and my husband's wedding, or like build me a cake? And Ben was like, no, I don't think I could do that. And like it was just like really weird. Like it like you should look it up, like Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, like homosexuality or something. It's like it's just like a 2-minute clip. It's just like the most cringiest shit. And like Dave Rubin is just pathetic, essentially.
He's just asking like it's just a weird question.
Yeah, just weird questions about gay. Like, would you go out to dinner with me and my husband? And he was like, yeah, sure. He's like, would you go to our wedding? Oh no, I couldn't do that. Like,
and they're using that to kind of gauge like, were they using that to kind of like gauge like how homophobic he was or something? Like,
well, I mean, in his mind, it's for his religion, but it is like a very like homophobic like. Very like old age like way of thinking. Like, are you fucking kidding me, man? Like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah. With Ben kind of like being like that. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So like, yeah, that was my point. Like, I see. Like, I think it was a combination of like him being bullied and him just like being super fucking Jewish.
Oh, that makes sense.
Like just way too Jewish. Like most people are like, bro, come on, calm down.
That's wild, man. I feel for you, man. Like, I get it. Like, you don't really like. You're just mad. You're just mad about life. I get it, man.
Oh shit, what? Anyways, we were gonna talk about your music.
Yeah.
So you've released 2 projects, pretty much back to back. I mean, it's not really, but essentially. Aubisms 2, and then you did. I don't know what.
Aubs and Trig.
It's just called Aubs.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, this is named between us 2. That one's kind of like really a random project that we've been working on like for the last year, just like because we just like working with each other and we just put some songs together and just
That's
made
awesome.
it. Yeah, yeah, no, it's crazy, man. And this is like one of the things that like I love social media as much qualms as I have about it. Not even about social media, just how we use it. Like it has connected me with like really unique people. But Trig, who was the other guy on this on the Aubs and Trig project, I met him through Instagram when I put my Sensei Syllables projects out. Before I put them out, he like sent me some beats. I'm like, oh, thanks, man. Who I never met from the interwebs. Thank you. So I took his beat and put on this project. We just kind of like began talking after that. I'd come up here and we'd get together, like make beats and write songs. And we're like, man, like got to know each other more out of that. I'm like, man, like we should just work on a project together. Like it's cool to have like you being this dude who was like in prison. Like he if you get like that's one guy that I think you should like definitely have on here if you would like.
Sorry, who?
Jay Trigg.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
he's a really interesting dude. Like he's so like he was like he grew up, he was a gang affiliated at one point of his life.
Oh,
like
damn.
sold drugs and like was kind of like really in that was just kind of really in that lifestyle. Went to prison for a long time, became Islamic out of that.
Oh wow! No way.
And like he's just this dope dude, man. Like he's just super dope. Like he has a dope story, but I got to know more about that one. Like the more we start working together and all that. And I was like, man, like we should just do this project with you being this dude who had this experience here, this dude who's now like a dad, has a kid, and like he's just kind of like a pops, but like used to be out here in these streets.
Yeah,
I was just like, man, like it'd be cool to do a project with like this guy and then me and just two different people and like kind of like make a really dope little kind of old school kind of feel project. So we worked on that.
That's awesome.
Last year, man. Yeah.
Wow. I'll have to go back and like listen to the lyrics a little harder on that because that's a really interesting story. I'll have to try that.
Yeah, you'll really have to look. It's funny, like you'll hear like it's funny just having like Trig, this guy, like when he's rapping, you'll hear like him being this like guy with this gangster bravado, but at the same time it's like, yo, I'm a thug, but I still got a daughter, cause like it's like he's like I'm gonna be rapping gangster, but that was my old life. Like it's kind of cool just seeing him like. He's kind of like this dad with like the like polo button up, but still has like a Glock right under his shirt. Like that's kind of like his rap. That encompasses his rap style on that project. a dad in a polo who still has a Glock right at the side of his waist.
That'd be a great album cover,
right? Man,
like a suburban like deal that you just like have like drugs and guns. Like.
Yeah, we had so many ideas for the album cover. But like with us having this distance between each other and all that, it's like, man, like
that'd be hard.
Yeah, we just kind of got this like photo that he's like, man, I took this photo in Chicago. I'm like, cool, we'll just start a project. Does it have anything to do with it? No, it's all right. It's aesthetic, you know. But it really is a cool project, though. It really is a cool like little 5-track, 20-minute project. And like again, like just being able, it's just being able to have that collaboration was like just the exciting part of that project. Honestly, more exciting just than the releasing it was exciting, obviously, because like people can kind of hear what we made, but like just the whole process of us like getting together, having these talks, and just making music out of it is just like super dope, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think more people need to just like collaborate, like put out combo albums and like, you know, just do like those short, quick releases. Like Matt, MF Doom, rest in peace. Like he would do like these just really, I think it was Bishop Neuro. They did like Neurovillain, maybe it was called, but like he like MF Doom rapped a little bit, did the beats, and then that rapper did most of the rapping. And like that was like a really like a 20-30 minute project. It was quick and short. Like I think people in Iowa need to really get on that. Like we have the variety of artists and rappers who are all talented. And, we can absolutely really utilize that.
Yeah, there's no reason why like collaboration shouldn't happen with like with how how many artists there are, and even the Midwest, and like with how many as well too. Like with how many like artists are in the Midwest and like how close we are. Like in close proximity. Like even though like maybe like 2-3 hours like from here is the Quad Cities and all that. But I think kind of that. I think sometimes the pursuit of like being an artist kind of gets in the way though, because like I think I only talk from experience of like there's artists that I've wanted to work with that I've reached out to, and like they kind of like have this like the first thing they ask is like, oh, how many followers do you have or how much of this, and they kind of gauge that off whether they're gonna work with you or not. Which like I've never got like the more I processed a lot of my brain. I was like, I just don't get that though. Like I think that's where you can kind of let this like at the end of the day like. it's like Spotify numbers are fictitious. Like it's just a number representing something. Like it doesn't. You have it gives you no worth. Or not, the only worth that you get is only from the machine itself. Like outside of it, it doesn't really exist. It shouldn't matter. The numbers shouldn't matter. You know, like it's. I think sometimes we make the numbers and the business isms like make more sense than just like the heart of art, which is just kind of just collaborating with people. You know, I think that kind of stops people. You know, like you'll see homie over here, like, oh, this guy only has 2 listeners a month. I won't collab with him, or if I do, I'm gonna bring more benefit to him. So I'm gonna charge him like $50.
Yeah, right.
It's just like which I understand the feature thing for a while, like to an extent. Like I don't do that to people. Like if somebody wants to be on a feature, like I just like being able to write, so I'm just like fuck it. I don't really do that, but I have been charged by people to do features like outside of the Quad City, so I kind of get it. But it's just like it's again like not allowing that to get in the way of just creating and like working with other people. Once you get those islands, like it's like you may get where you want to, but it's kind of like you don't get to like you don't get the benefit of just like creating with other people and like being in that space, just working with people, you know.
Yeah, it's true. I think, you know, and I do want to say, I think there's been a lot of collaboration, especially towards the end of 2020. I've seen a lot of projects drop.
Oh yeah,
a lot of collabs. People are definitely doing it.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, that's dope. I haven't seen a lot. I guess I haven't seen a lot of collabs. Like, I mean, outside of like the stuff I do with other people, I haven't seen like a lot of collabs like in the Quad City. So yeah, I mean, in the Midwest, like, so you'd have had to like put me on some people for sure.
Yeah, well, Lolo's last album, he worked with G7 and D-Lo on the production aspect of it, and he worked with Drowned Hero Pac-Man on track. I think there were a couple other people on a couple of his tracks. D-Wavy put out an album. You obviously put out an album. You had collabs on there. Yeah, I guess it's just you know, I like seeing that opposed to like, you know, when I put out a project and it's like mostly just me rapping, because like, you know, I just, you know, don't necessarily, it's been better this year, but up until recently I've had like the worst time trying to get people on, you know, on features, because because they, you know, I feel like I have like a really weird music style. Like I have weird samples and like I kind of have weird tones, and like sometimes people just like, you know, I can't vibe to this, and like I don't know.
Really, man, I like that though. I like the fact that you have like different, like you're really experimental with it, man. Like, yeah, I'd say, man, yeah, we got to talk about that then. I definitely would like do some stuff for sure. We definitely do a feature.
Fuck yeah.
Call the track McAllister Hours. No, that's if McAllister Hours was ever like a track, that sounds like it would be like kind of like one of those like McAllister Hours. The hours that we light the candle. It feels like it'd be really like R&B ish almost. But like the kind of R&B that kind of comes from like those white dudes with like the kind of like the what do you call it? It's just like the
froze.
What's up?
The froze?
Not the froze, but just like those curls, like the.
Do you know what he's talking about,
Molly? I kind of like. So like. When you see those big like muscular like very chiseled white dudes who have like the curly hair, Aquaman the movie, that kind of hair, but kind of like curled up. Like I feel like it'd be R&B from like those kind of dudes who had like maybe like they
had like a bunch of tattoos and shit,
like a perm. Boom. Yeah.
Okay.
And just kind of just like the halfway button up white shirt, kind of looking like Romeo out of a play or something. Just like the McAllister Hours. Like just one of those like. It's got like black, like tight, like leather pants. Well, so maybe I wouldn't. Maybe we won't call the project because I can't deliver.
I can't deliver on that either.
Like, I don't got the soul glow hair.
Damn, that's funny.
Yeah, that's exactly what came to my mind when I thought McAllister Hours.
Damn. Yeah, I haven't really worked on beats in a while. I've kind of been focusing on like this podcast has been a huge focus for me. Like I have a lot of people I feel like I like lined up for the next year. Haven't necessarily talked to like probably half of them that I have in mind, but I have the next 3 months set for sure.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah. So you know, yeah, I mean, this is where I feel like I've garnered most of my success. So I think
Yeah.
it makes a lot more sense to focus on this first and my music second.
Yeah, and you've been busy with this, so like, yeah, it just happens like that. Like, it's hard being able to, it's hard doing like music and
Yeah.
like podcasting at the same time. I think that's why, like, with our Black Dots podcast, I think that's why it's been always so hard with us, like having like episodes, because like I've always been the person who's been doing them, and like we've tried to find other people to host, but people kind of just come and go. But I've been kind of like doing the same thing with this year, like with like 2020, like I worked on like 4 projects, and like I have them all done, and I think I got a lot of creative stuff down, like for the next couple years, like music wise. So I've been making the switch. Like me and my manager were like talking, like and saying like we're making the switch of like just focusing on this podcast now, because I'm like, man, like I'm always going to be writing. That's always going to be a thing. But like I think I have stuff that I can intentionally put out for the next 2 years where I can focus on this art form a little better now, of like podcasting, because it's such a different art form, man. It's like, I think for me, like I've never, because I've like I've always tried to do with music. I never really like sat down and really like kind of appreciated the art form of podcasting, because there's a lot of like, it's a very artful like kind of an endeavor, man. Like just being able to like sit down and really being ready to like kind of like either freestyle with somebody, being able to be in the wave of what they're talking about, being able to like hop over here, hop over there, or even if you're like having it be one of those things where you're writing out questions before, like there's a very artful process of it. Like if you're interviewing somebody who's a superintendent, like I did with like our podcast, like with the Black Dots podcast, I was like, okay, superintendent, like what do they do? Okay, how can like what's happening in the Quad Cities that would like involve a superintendent? That would be a good question to ask. Like, there's a lot of artfulness that goes in like podcasting, man. Yeah. That a lot of people just don't like. I think myself, I should say more so. Never really got down to sit down and appreciate the art of, because I've always been like making music. So it's gonna be good to have this period of just really kind of like being in the wave of podcasting more and understand the art a little bit more.
Yeah, it's it's a lot of fun. I think people don't give people who podcast enough credit. Like there's something like you have to like talk. Like sometimes it's especially when you start out, a lot of it's bullshit. Like there's a lot of things I've said, like whether I'm drinking or just it's gone too long and I'm just trying to fill up space. And
yeah, like, you're just like, man, yeah.
Especially when you like putting out like an hour or two like a week. I think I'm up to like at least maybe not that many. I don't know. It's a couple 100 hours at least.
Oh, that's crazy.
My Spotify, and you just think about like, God, like I've only been doing this for 9 months. I've already generated that much content. It's insane. Like somebody's like, if this blew up, they would just have like my entire like last year's, where they'd be like, oh, he said this fucking dumbass thing. Yeah, like he's this. And
I think that's like, I think that's a cool thing about podcasting too, because like that's it's kind of like music, like
true.
I kind of use Kanye as an example, even though it's kind of backwards for him, where like people are like, man, we missed the old Kanye.
Yeah,
like, this guy's garbage now. I'm like, man, like the thing is, the cool thing about it is like you're seeing his narrative move along, like being like what college dropout Kanye was like, what this person Kanye was like, and all this, and like seeing all the mistakes and all this. I think like in the podcasting, like the fact that people can kind of like see the kind of like different seasons, for lack of a better term, of like the person. Like I think that's a cool thing. Like just seeing like, oh, like they said this here and this is this and the other. I think there's kind of like it's kind of like you're seeing a growth going there. I remember there's the Duncan Trussell podcast I was listening to earlier this week. And he had his ex at the time. Like he had his ex on there a couple times, but I forgot her name. But there's one podcast episode where he had her on 3 weeks after they broke up, and I'm sitting there listening to the podcast. I'm like, man, like this person sounds like annoying, like super freaking annoying. Like my goodness, like she's not letting him talk. Like she just sounds very like bourgeoisie and like all this. And I'm like, man, like this person's annoying. I heard another podcast from her and I'm like, holy shit, like this is amazing. And like I didn't look at him like, oh, like she sucked then and she's better here. It's like, no, like that's just the space that she was in. And like that was like it's
that's interesting.
Like I think that's kind of a cool thing. There, not to say again, like there might not be those people who do look at this still, but like, oh, like this sucks. All this, it's kind of cool, like as the creative, I guess, like seeing like, man, like It's kind of a journey, though. You can kind of see where I busted my knee here or fell on my ass and then got drunk here and said some shit to somebody I shouldn't have said. And, like, days where I was just like, cool, you know? Like, it's cool. It's kind of cool to see that narrative. It's almost like I'm an audible, what are those, like, I feel so, like, when you're saying this, I'm like, oh, so what is this thing that they had in the 1990s? A picture book? What are those things? Like, the books that they, like, we used to put pictures in. We don't do it.
Like scrapbooks?
Is that what they were called?
Like where you, like, take photos and paste them and, like, do shit
they're kind of like, well,
or they're like the film.
It's like those big, I don't know if you, like, so when I was a kid, my mom would, like, take pictures of our Christmas. It was before, like, IG and all that. They'd take pictures, develop these pictures, and, like, put them in a book and, like, have that book and, like, have kind of, like, your whole, like, narrative in this, like, big book from, like, when you were, like, 5 over here. I forgot the name of the book.
Like it was specially printed and it had words on it, or it was just, like, slots for pictures?
It was pretty much like a photo book.
Okay, yeah, like, I mean, like a photo album then, yeah.
Okay, that's what it's called. I was saying, I feel like, oh, what's that? What's that thing that we used to have? Back in the day, before we had Instagram and all this saving our pictures. Oh, photo albums. See, like, I totally forgot the name of that. I was like, wow, I feel like one of those people. But, like, that's what podcast is like. Podcast is like a photo album. It's an audible photo album.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a cool thing about it.
That's tight. That's tight.
I totally forgot.
That's funny. That's funny.
Called it a picture book. See, this is how much technology's fucked me up. Like, I just forget shit that was like...
Dude, I feel like I can't keep up, honestly, sometimes. Like, there's sometimes, like, when I'm, like, trying to work with social media apps and I can't figure out how to, like, do this thing, like, I feel like an old man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm only 25, but, like, there are these fuckers who are, like, 10 years younger than me going,
What do you think about TikTok? Do you use TikTok?
No.
Yeah,
oh, God. So, Molly does not do drugs. She watches TikTok. She sends me, like, 7 of those fucking things a day. And, like, I refuse. I refuse to download the app. I don't know. This sounds really, and this honestly isn't even the reason, but it's just, like, me being a smartass. Like, it's a Chinese app, and, like, there's the whole thing where, like, all of America is just, like, putting their entire lives for, like, the entire world to see. Like, I don't know. That's extreme, but that's not even, like, honestly, at the end of the day, I think it's fucking stupid. A lot of, like, 15, 16-year-olds just twerking, which I'm not really comfortable with. So, yeah, there's, like, plenty of reasons for me to just say, like, yeah, fuck it. Like, I know that people have gained popularity and fame off of it, but I don't know. This is just such a, like, you know, going back to, like, the Capitol and, like, you know, censorship along with that. Like, this is just such a time where there's, like, so much crap going on. The less of that crap I have, the better.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. No, it's funny because, like, there's 2 things I want to say with that. I'm gonna try to, like, remember them. But the thing is, like, I refuse to use TikTok. I refuse to get it at all.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't. Like, to me, it's just like I don't want to get sucked into that. Like, because I know that I'll get sucked into it, and I know that, like,
the whole time
there ain't no going back for me. Like, it's funny. Like, one of my roommate was telling me how my roommate just got a TikTok, just for, like, his DJing stuff, just kind of, like, random stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, he's been able to, like, pay bills off of just having stuff on TikTok because people will, like, see his beats on TikTok or, like, watch his stuff and, like, hit him up to, like, buy beats.
Damn.
Like, he just sold a beat to this theater company in New York off of TikTok.
Wow, no way.
I have another homie in Chicago who just came out with a project, Orlando Coolridge, really good homie. His project Sodatu is crazy dope. But
Molly, you might have to manage my TikTok.
You see
TikToks?
We'll figure it out together.
It's just like it'll be a collaborative project. Bring you guys closer together. Right?
Sorry, continue.
Taking my 15-second videos real quick. Molly, take a video real quick. Put the caption: Quarantine Day 2,500, and then make the music be Ariana Grande, and I'm gonna move my lips to the song.
And everybody's gonna think it's hilarious.
Right? And
Buy my
guess
merch.
what? There's gonna be a million people who flock to it, and we're gonna be stars. We're gonna pay the bills off this.
We need to find an 18-year-old with the perfect ass.
Yeah, all right.
We need this shit pronto.
We need somebody twerking in the background for no apparent reason, just to be doing it.
Do you remember the guy who had the weird ass videos of the chicks twerking while he's playing violin?
No. Oh, I've seen one of those videos.
Yeah.
I have seen one of them.
Yeah, he's just playing violin. There's like there's just all this weird shit going on. There's just like this chick just like twerking, and it's like he like does videos, like a video every day, like he was for a while, every day of like chicks just twerking while he's playing violin. It's
That
the
is-
fucking most random shit.
I thought, I didn't know it was like a series of just like twerking and violins. That'd be a dope little name if you ever thought of like something. But I didn't know it was like a series. I saw one video. I was like, oh, well, that's crazy. Like this is quite the art piece. Like you got classical and the hood all in one place. Like wow, this is America and a shot. No, but I forgot what I was saying. Yeah, just like my homie from Chicago, like he's gained like 700 like monthly listeners like of like his music and all that. And like it's helped him branch out. And I'm like, man, like I see the success of it, but I'm not about that life. Like I don't want to. I just can't go there. And like the thing is, like I feel like your TikTok fans, like people who like are on TikTok, like could be a very ambiguous bag of people. Like if I like, let's say again, like and this goes over the quality versus quantity thing for me. Like I don't want if I was to get a TikTok and put my music on there, I don't want like 5,000 12-year-olds just following my music. Just like, hey, I saw you on TikTok, man. Can I use your song to make this video of me being Superman with my shirt off and playing my face? Like, fuck no. Like, don't do that shit. Like, just like,
where are your parents?
like, I just can't do. I would not want like just 5,000. Like I would not want like to be followed by like 5,000 like 12 or 15 or 18-year-olds the next day on my IG. Just then my page like, hey, what's up, man? I saw your video on TikTok. It's like I don't want. It's just like you can't pick your fans. I know it. You can't pick your fans, but like I just don't want like that to be the big brunt of them. Like,
yeah.
You know, like I'd rather do it the hard way and just like build those people and you know
exactly.
It's just I can't like TikTok's just a different beast. And it's funny. Like one thing that I think is funny about TikTok is like the like how ambiguously it's being used. Honestly, like you know, like you'll have like those funny videos like we were talking about and all that. And there's like a lot of therapists who've been like using it, like also of just like you know like I don't know the terminology of TikTok, so like I'm just gonna call everything like subtitles or captions. But like you'll have like a therapist be like feeling depressed, do these 3 things. Drink water, smile, call your mom. And it's just like, they make these like little TikTok videos like, wow, like, that's kind of like, and it's just like, I'm not even hating on it. It's just like, wow, that's just different. Wow, that is creative. Like, good for you. But then also you'll have, again, like, super conservative people using TikTok. You have like, pro-Trump. One America back is like, bitch, I cannot take you seriously. You made a TikTok about how conservative you are. Like, nah, like fuck out of here. Like, it's just like, but it's so interesting. Like, wow, like people are like using it for just everything. I remember this is like one of the first TikTok videos I saw was like actually really confusing me because like I thought TikTok was just like a funny thing where you just make funny videos. And it was this girl who just like was not saying anything and like a tear fell down her face. She's like, sometimes it's okay to be sad. And I'm like, damn, fuck. Where the fuck is this going? And like, I was laughing at first. I'm like, this is probably going somewhere funny. But like, she just laid on the couch and started shedding a tear too. Like, sometimes it's okay not to feel like you want to do anything. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I came here to laugh. And now I'm like indifferent about life. Like, the hell am I supposed to do with this? Like, she's just kind of like, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to just lay on the couch.
And then, yeah, isn't that always the most awkward way? You watch a TikTok, you're like, this is unsettling. Then it just ends, and you're just like, oh, okay.
It's like, damn, well, so much for a laugh from me. Like, I can't laugh at this shit.
Oh my god.
And it's just, TikTok, I just can't do it. Instagram's the only thing that I've committed myself to. That's the last app, and like even that's been getting crazy. I've
always, it's sad because I all of last year I always felt like the one thing that I could go to. Oh, weird light turn on.
I like that.
The one place that you could go to that was like kind of a happy place was Instagram.
Yeah.
You could follow political shit if you wanted, but they did a pretty good job of filtering that out.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I mean, towards the end there was the whole make sure you're sharing the correct election info, which I thought was kind of bogus. Personally.
Yeah, exactly.
Like going back to the whole censorship thing, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like this year, I feel like it's all I see anymore. And like I kind of get it, everyone's kind of making jokes about it because it is kind of a ridiculous thing. Like the guy sitting in Pelosi's office, the Viking guy,
Yeah.
the guy holding the podium.
Yeah,
like,
it's
those things.
shit.
Yeah, it is funny. I get it, but
Yeah.
like it is kind of like you go on there, you're like, this is happening. That's right.
Yeah, when you see people post like these very like serious clips or like these very like polarizing like memes or just like very aggressive like politically it's like fuck like goddamn like I just came here to see some pictures like see some musicians and like I look through this like it's gotten to that. That's Instagram's slowly been turning into me and turning into that. I'm like man like.
I mean, it's owned by Facebook, so it's not really surprising.
What's up?
It's owned by Facebook, so it's not really
surprising. That is, yeah. You do make a point. I always forget about that. That it is owned by Facebook. I'm like, man, like, I might just have to just tell people, email me.
They've kept the illusion alive for so long.
Yeah. But low-key, that's why, like, I mean, that's the whole, like, idea. And, like, with that happening, though, honestly, that I think that's kind of breeded a lot of, like, really creative, like, social media apps, too. Like, have you heard of Clubhouse at all?
Sounds familiar.
It's this new app that people have been using, and like it has a pretty cool concept. It's only for iPhone, so I haven't been able to use it, but I've been invited to it. But Androids don't really do nothing. They faithful to but it's like pretty much this app where like it has like these. You can follow different people. Like let's say you follow Joe Budden, for example. And like you can have like, and he has like like he'll post something of like having a conversation about music, and like you'll have like in these conversations you can sit in and participate vocally, kind of like it's like a pod. It's like if Facebook was a podcast. And you can just go to different people's pages and like have these conversations. But the thing about Clubhouse is you have to get invited to it, so like you don't have it over flooded by like just a lot of people who are just like nonchalantly using it. It's very thoughtful people. Like there's a therapist I follow, Jason Wilson, who's a super dope dude. He like his Clubhouse are always talking about like kind of like what mental mental health issues in like Black communities, like kind of like what it was like for them to give themselves permission to cry or like kind of like do things that were like feminized almost. And like I'm like man, like that's dope. Like those are good conversations happening, and like I'm glad that it's kind of like using social media in a way that's like is dope, So like out of all this, I feel like a lot of like people have like been seeing it and I've been creating like platforms that like are keeping people in a social space, but making it kind of like I don't like using the word positive because I feel like it's just such a cliche word, but just making it something that's like productive more so, like even like right now, like I think I talked to you about it. It might be the first time I mentioned on the podcast, but I've been for the last 2 years. Me and my manager have been like brainstorming and working on this little social media network ourselves.
Oh wow!
Called Creative Culture TV. That it's going to be out this year, but pretty much like it's going to be a place like a social media platform that helps creatives connect to community and also connect with other creatives. Like a lot of creatives, like we like social media because like the connection, the meaningful connections it gives us, and like the collaboration opportunities it gives us. Like we just have to like always like see all the bullshit with it,
Exactly.
So like for me, I'm like, why not create something that like gives creatives still that space of like really making those meaningful connections, and also being able to like have a space where they can like also like monetize off of like what they make. Like let's say we have a visual artist who has a creative culture account, and like she has a page and all that. She can use this platform to like sell her art, and people can come to her like page to kind of like buy art from her and all this, and she can engage with people as well. So like we've been working on that too to kind of just break that spell of like what we've kind of turned social media into, and like kind of like create something where like everybody can benefit, like and can have the connections that they desire without all the right versus left, big versus small. That's not a thing, but That's probably it.
Yeah. That's kind of been, going back to like filtering it out. I'd be curious to see if like the COVID conversation would like still, because I feel like that's something that I've heard about a lot in Iowa that's dividing people. Is like going on performing or not going on performing. There's a large group of people who don't want anyone to be out performing at all, period. And there's a lot of people who, let's get out there and do it. There are people in, like the businesses and concert venues that like rely on that for their income. So that's kind of, I guess I was just kind of curious as you were saying that, how that would play out in Iowa. I am curious. You were talking about, sorry, not to derail, but
no, you're fine.
You were talking about therapy. Not to get too personal, but I was in therapy before COVID. And I've kind of avoided it since because I didn't really know what is it like now with COVID. Is it still all over Zoom or?
Yeah, I know the place that I went to in the Quad Cities. They did all their calls like via Zoom.
Okay.
So for me, like that was my first like experience, just like going to therapy. Like I went to therapy when I was like maybe 8. Like no, yeah, when I was like 8 or 9, when my parents were having like marital issues and shit like that. Like, but not able to remember shit. But this time was like my first time in my adult life, like going through therapy. So like having Zoom, like doing it through Zoom, like it was different, but it was my first like kind of engagement in therapy. So like I was like, okay, cool. Like it's still pretty new though, so I didn't really mind it, And it's yeah, and for me, just being like an introvert and like someone who always gets like super anxious around people, like I think that Zoom kind of like made it better, where we were able to just get to our points better and all that, and I didn't really have like that. Yeah, because I just like I don't know, I always feel like myself like becoming super self conscious, like in those if like what having those like vulnerable conversations are all more with somebody who I don't know. So like I think having that distance was like, okay, like I'm in my space, like it's okay, it's cool, like, and this is great. Like I don't know the psychology behind it in my brain, but it just made it a lot more better for me.
That's interesting. Because I have avoided it for the exact opposite reason.
Oh yeah,
because I feel like I need to be in the room and like with the person. I feel like being removed with like via call. I don't know. So like I just like there have been times, it's been a rough year. There have been times where I maybe thought, maybe I should take therapy, but that's always stopped me. And I've always just been like, I'm just gonna work through it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing though, because like I mean, to kind of like with that considered though, like having that distance, I also think that like kind of like I don't know, like it kind of gives, because you're so like there's almost like a productivity that that happens in that, like being uncomfortable too, like just being able to like have those uncomfortable conversations like face to face, like there's kind of like a like something productive, like I think that kind of comes out of that. So like with that considered too, like I think like even though it made me more comfortable and all that, I think it also kind of like made it so that I didn't really experience something to the fullness of it, like really kind of like what it feels like to be like, yo, like I tried to kill myself yesterday, and like not saying that through a computer is like way more easier than saying it in person,
Yeah.
Like I think that kind of robbed me of just like really kind of that getting into that space of like vulnerability, So even though it was easier, is not always like the best,
Yeah. I think there's something too with like being in a different environment. Like if you're really struggling with, that kind of stuff, like staying in that environment isn't really gonna I don't know, like stepping outside of that and like dealing with it in an outside different environment, it kind of wakes your brain up, kind of snaps it back in a way. Like, if you're at home depressed, or if you have those tendencies, or you're thinking about that, like going out and interacting with people, you kind of just get a new face on it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, so like there's this one time, like there's one of my homies who really put it into my brain that like one of my homies from like 5 years ago, my homie Jason, I think it's about 5 or 6 years ago. He was the guy who really kind of like introduced the idea of going to therapy for me, because like before that, like I just thought like it's back when I was like, I'm 29 now, so back when I was like 23, and like it was like back then I was still in a place of like I never really thought about it, because like it was not really nobody really talked to me about it, so like it's like he was the one who kind of like planted the idea like therapy in my head, but I remember because he was going to school for psychology, I believe, and he wanted to be a therapist and all that. But I remember there was like one time, we had this weekly like group like of just guys, and we just get together and like have conversation around a book that we were reading. And I remember one time I just like showed up and I was just like not feeling it. I was like in like just like really like dark, just kind of like numb place.
Yeah.
And I'm just like sitting here, just like man, like this stinks. And like I kind of want to tell them how much life stinks right now, but I feel like I shouldn't. But I feel like I should. And like while we were kind of just sitting there talking and like eating and all that, I like began like my body just began crying. I'm like man, like damn, like it's, and I think it just kind of shows like it's like I just needed to kind of like have the outlet at that time, but like at that moment I was kind of like damn, like I'm crying in front of these dudes, like fuck, this is uncomfortable, this I hate this, but like out of it, like the like and like this is like this just goes to show like it's like my homies like they did what they were supposed to do well in that moment, like they were just kind of like were there present, they didn't think it was weird, they didn't try to like change the conversation or try to make something funny. They were just kind of like really in that moment with me and all that. And after that, like we had conversation about everything. I felt 10 times better. So it's just like, man, like just that being in front of them and like doing this weird thing that I didn't like doing. Even just like even admitting crying was just like the fact that I just admitted it like a theory as opposed to saying like I was crying. Like my brain wasn't telling me to cry. I was crying, you know, just like even having like that like those uncomfortable spaces of just like admitting that stuff, like it really kind of made me feel way better. So it's like, wow, like, okay, I did this and like, I don't feel like I'm an alien or anything. So yeah. So I feel like to come back to what we were talking about, like, I definitely do think there is a power in like meeting face to face with somebody and all that.
Getting that human connection.
Yeah. And I think it's needed all the more now, man. I was just having this conversation. Or like I was having, whenever I say I was having this conversation, 80% of the time it's in my head. So I was having this conversation with myself. I was having this conversation off of this. There was this thing that I was noticing on Instagram where, long story short, there was this like Instagram, this dude I used to follow. He posted this video about this white woman like who was wearing a bonnet, and like she was asked a question why she's fetishizing black culture, and she's like, I'm not, like this is just who I am. And I'm like, yeah, like if she wants to wear a fucking bonnet, whatever, like is that what we're mad about? Like why are we mad about a fucking bonnet? Like it didn't really black people wear it, but it doesn't belong to us. Like it's just a fucking bonnet. But like I pretty much like, and I know better, I shouldn't be doing these things, but I just asked the question, like why does this matter? And like a lot of people just like started like, mainly like black people started attacking me. It's like, this is like, she took our culture. It's like, aren't you mad? Aren't you tired? It's just like, oh, we like, people were just so mad. And I'm like, wow, like these people are really upset. And I'm like, I was thinking about it, it's like, I wonder if like racism has all the more like made people have like this traumatic triggering to like clap back at things like that and like defensiveness, you know, like I just wonder like how much like when people were having these conversations of like, oh, they can't take this. This belongs to black culture. Or like, oh, we should just divide ourselves from like white people, or like having these big assertions and like putting big theories around behind them that sound good. Like, I wonder how much these people are just really traumatized because we don't talk about mental health in black communities much. They just learn to like take this and wear it in a way where it looks more like a tuxedo than a fucking like disaster zone, you know? I've always like wondered that. Like, especially like with everything happening now, like I feel like like in 2020, like not only did like people in the black community just have like COVID to be worried about, the George Floyd thing happened, Breonna Taylor thing happened, and there's like a lot of cases after that happened that weren't talked about, you know? There was a lot of other like murders and like people getting beat, like the dude in here in Des Moines, Daquan Evans or Daquan Jones.
I thought I heard something.
The one who got stomped out by some white kids. They fractured 8 parts of his face.
Oh wait, yes. Okay, now that sounds more familiar. Yeah. Okay, I do remember that. That was
yeah, and it's just like seeing all this stuff. Like black people have like taking COVID and all these new restrictions, and some of them probably being like financially burdened like the rest of us. To seeing these George Floyd things happen, to seeing these big protests happen, to being reminded of like the shitty history of the U.S., I wonder how much of that has just like deteriorated the brain to a place where it's just enraged and angry and like will try to make irrationality sound like rationality because like they don't have any healing and all that. I'm like, damn, like I feel like all the more therapy like is needed for like people in this time. Like I kind of think about woke people, you know, like
yeah.
I think there's a lot of trauma in the woke community, you know, like The fact that people are like try to make these grandiose things of like, oh yeah, we should just hate white people. We should just do this. We should do this. Like, no, I just think you're angry. And I think you've been hurt, man. And like, you just got to be able to say that. But again, like mental health, like I shouldn't even say like black communities. I don't know like if mental health's really talked about a lot in general. Like there's obviously there's a lot of households that are like a lot more like privileged to talk about it in the sense because they know they have the money for it. But
yeah, so I was gonna say this might be a bold statement, but I think it's like in lower income families, like it's not something that's like normalized. Like my ex's family, for instance, they were. I mean, I wasn't super high class, but I was probably upper middle class. My ex's family was probably lower, and that family definitely didn't really. I mean, I think they all suffered from severe mental problems, and no one really put forth that effort to like really seek out it. And me being in the environment I was in, my parents almost put too much effort into mental health. Like I think that says a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny as you say that because like I feel like I kind of like I piggyback that statement just because like my I was like more middle class. Like I like growing up, like my mom worked for the city. Like she was a city like she worked for like finances for the city of Rock Island, and my dad just did like he just did odd jobs and like factory jobs and stuff like that. So we were pretty well off to a point where like if I would have asked my parents, like my parents they could have afforded like therapy for any of us, like if need be, but the conversation didn't really happen. I think a lot because of the religious angle, and I think that like kind of like stifles a lot of communities, kind of too, like where because like they were religious and all that, they just kind of like thought, even though they went to therapy, ironically, like early in their like during their marriage and all that, they thought of like you did things like pray or fast or read your Bible or accept Jesus in your heart, like everything will be all right. And I feel like that's kind of like I think they're just kind of like one narrative of like a broader narrative when it comes to like kind of the religious community of like where sometimes it's not talked about because like people are like, oh, like that's just man-made stuff of the devil. Just pray and just don't eat for 3 days.
And
pray while you don't eat for 3 days and you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's kind of like tribalism, and I think that you see that in a modern day, like talking about like the censorship or like you can't say this. It's like that extended, like it's that like you just do this. This person's racist, so I'm not gonna like by that definition. I'm just not gonna listen to anything they have to say, and I'm gonna remember like forever shield them, even if that claim is not true. Which I would argue most of the time it's probably not in terms of the media.
Yeah, exactly. It just kind of like it just creates another barrier that like is the demise of somebody, like, just like you'll have those people who will just be like, oh well, okay, I don't need mental health, I just need to pray and just go to church all the time. And these people I met people who are like that, and like they're just very unstable people. Like you just knew like, okay, there's something here that they're not honest about, but they're saying these things because they feel like they have to, and it's just like, man, like there's not that when that offer to like have those conversations mental health wise like isn't there, like it just leads to just being destructive and just kind of like even destructive in the more subtle ways, like just kind of like keeping everything kind of in and all that.
This is kind of an interesting thought I had. It might be dicey, but I feel like you're a person I can have this kind of conversation with. I think there's something to be said where, talking about like the woke people, like this pro-black movement, like nobody's really willing to look at the problems of, black culture. And, like the glorification of like weapons or, crime. Like, obviously I don't really understand these things as much, but
like expand on that a little bit more, like the glorification of crime, like
in hip hop, like there's I'm not saying that because a lot of that crime is from low income status.
Oh, okay, I know
but there is like something to be said where it's glorified, and it's not just in the black community. It's in the white community too, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
Probably just a lower class thing.
Yeah. No. I think that's it's funny. Me and my manager have those same conversations like all the time, just about that, like how how there's kind of like this like almost like people. It's the same thing with what like like all these things have a common thread, man, right? So like it's the same thing we were saying about like these very right wing people who are now attacking the White House, saying they're infringing on their rights, but they ignored like they didn't extend that same grace to people like Kaepernick. There's almost like this one-sidedness of like you guys need to do this. Like it's the same thing in the wilderness community. Like that's the same parallel where like there's this attacking of like the white man doing this, that, this is that, and the other, but there's no conversation of like looking back at like of like what's happening in communities of like just a glorification of like violence, this, that, and the other. Yeah, it's crazy because like I mean like for me like obviously being somebody who's a hip hop head and a rap head, I tell people like this, like people like J Rock, his Redemption album. I'll use that for example. Like J Rock is a dude who was like obviously the rapper who signed with TDE, who's from like the same place, the same place Kendrick was from.
Yeah.
This dude was really in the streets. He was really like a gangbanger. He was really like selling drugs. He was really like in that narrative, the narrative of many black kids who live in like low income projects and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like he shares his narrative of like gangbanging and like shit like that in this Project Redemption. But I like how he did it because he shared it in a way where like he's giving you a picture of where he's from. He's not glorifying it. He's like, this is it is what it is. This is the shit that I did. This is the shit that I've witnessed people do. The Art of Peer Pressure by Kendrick Lamar also.
I was just thinking that.
Another example, you know, like they talk about kind of like this gang affiliate life. I think Nipsey Hussle did the same a little bit too in some of his music too, Nipsey Hussle. But they're a part of like they talk about the narrative, but in a way they're saying like, yo, like this is the shit that I've been through and experienced, and like for that, like what it does to an individual, it allows them to like know a narrative that's different and almost like empathize with it, or even know that like for the person who's listening, they can like who lives in those kind of same places, like, oh, like I can get out of this like, mindset or this kind of like feel. But then there's the people who do kind of like glorify it, like again, like the Migos type like rappers and all this, or like the ones like the Baby, which like for me, like I have to admit, like I listen to him every once in a while. So like I critique myself in that too, where like nobody kind of like talks about how like kind of like the glorification, or even just kind of like the kind of highlighting of this life, like when it comes to like the blood spill that comes with it and all this is this and the other, and how this affects youth and all that, and like it allows them to follow a pattern. Nobody talks about that. Chicago's a big example. Chicago's a fucking big example. That's where a lot of the drill music culture came from. Well, like Chief Keef and King Louie. I don't know if you know like what like the drill culture was.
A little bit, yeah.
It's pretty much just like it's pretty much like trap music, but Chicago style. Like they would just talk about like kind of like running up in people's houses, killing them, and all this. And there's music in Chicago, like in West Chicago. It led to a lot of just like a lot of people, like a lot of this music leading to like beefs that cost 16-year-olds their lives, like 17-year-olds their lives, and all this is any other. And I know people who like are from Chicago like listen to that and get mad when people say like, oh, you can't talk about Chicago, you're not from it. It's just like I'm not saying that to like demonize anybody. It's just an observation of like what that music does though. But like nobody talks about like how the power of music. Like it's just funny like how like that is like a thing that like nobody like how that's not talked about, but like other things are kind of like being pursued to kind of like talk about it instead of like these things. So
yeah, exactly. Like another example, and these are generalizations. Like there's the stereotype that black people don't like homosexuality or are very anti-homosexuality. At least like the older generations. Like my point is, and this is like I feel like more with white people than anything. Like we're talking about like on your episode, like the white people, like the woke people, like they can't have any mind to criticize any minority group. Like you can never you can't just say, hey, this is a great culture, but there are these things, and that's for any culture. I mean, white people especially. We saw that fucking 5 days ago. I'm not saying that anyone is like all good or all bad, but like there seems to be this picture painted, and it's I don't know what that means for black people or white people or any.
Yeah, this picture painted of like what now? I think like this picture painted of just like
like the white people are the the evil this type of thing, and then the there's the black redemption and all that. Yeah, I
Again,
don't really
it's
know how to describe
yeah,
it.
no, I know exactly what you're saying. Like, because I'll say it like this. Like, there's this guy, Dr. Umar Johnson, who's like a Pan Africanist, pro-black, academic speaker. He's kind of like what Steve Crowder is to right-winged white people.
Okay.
Umar Johnson is what Steve Crowder is to like black woke like people. But he has this theory that he's talked about multiple times on like in interviews. You can find it on YouTube. I think on the Breakfast Club. He said it on the Breakfast Club one time. But like he talked about how he doesn't think that people who are black should not be with people who are white, like in any marriage or relational way, because that mean and if black people are in interracial relationships, it means that they hate themselves, that they want to be white, and it means that they're betraying their own kind. And like because Dr. Umar Johnson is again held as this like prestigious academic speaker, people eat that shit up. You know, people eat that up and like, oh yeah, like yeah, we should never like if my daughter dates somebody who's black, she's being disowned from the family or this, that, and the other. Because like somebody who's an academic says it, like everybody believes it. But yeah, I forgot what I was getting to.
Like Kamala Harris is like a perfect example. Like the first black vice president who also put away more black people for marijuana than any vice president.
Yeah, that's super funny. Yeah,
like give me a fucking break. Like it's like that type of shit. It's like what we were talking about. Like that's racism. Like you're taking a token black person and you're putting them on this pedestal that you know this is the way.
Yeah, exactly.
All and inclusivity.
And again, like you have, and again, I think this like I swear one day I'm gonna like write a paper on this or something because I think it's just so interesting. But like I think too, like people in the black community, like there's people in the black community who are like, yeah, like Kamala Harris put away hella people like black people in jail for like weed, like she's black, but like she's not what we think she is. But then again, there's people who just like really just jumped, who automatically just saw black and are like, oh, Kamala Harris.
Exactly. They're seeing colors.
Exactly, and I feel like it may sound sadder than I mean it to sound, but like I think for people in the black community, like we want a hero so bad, that we'll take whoever the hero is, whether it's this Umar Johnson who says, "Fuck you if you marry a white woman or a white man." Or Kamala Harris over here, who like the Jerry's just like we're kind of just grabbing at whoever has a big voice and a big presence and says things that make us feel good. You know, it's almost like this. Yeah, it's almost like kind of like it's as long as like there's somebody who kind of this is a black elitist formula.
Yeah,
makes it look well. And like makes it look good, like we'll get behind them, you know. Like if the American dream was black, like that's if it looks like that, like we'll get behind it. And it's just like I think it just speaks to like how kind of like helpless like people in the black community feel like when we know like a lot of like the cliche, like a lot of our leaders died. Like Fred Hampton was killed, Martin Luther King was killed, Malcolm X was killed. Mind you, that wasn't by like white people. But the conspiracy theorists would tell you different. But a lot of black leaders who like meant very well, who were very balanced and very like progressive in their thought processes, like they were killed. And like I think it's got to a place where like people are just so tired that like they don't want to look for standards with like leaders or like look at like the deeper fabrics of things like, okay, this person's a leader, like I'm just too exhausted. And again, the mental trauma thing's just like, I'm just going to take you as this leader and this is this any other, you know? Without questioning the complexities that are there, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the hardest parts about like having this kind of conversation with people is there is like an emotional part to it. Like black people have suffered like overall in this country. Like that's not something anybody's denying. Like that's why like, you know, if maybe you don't support Black Lives Matter, it's like really hard to tell someone that. Like tell someone why. Like, you know, I support black people, but I don't necessarily support this movement. You know?
And it's because of that hurt piece, you know, like it's just because of just like I think it's again like just there's a lot of people in the black community again like because I think it all leads back to that mental health piece. I think like when you're mentally like for me, like I had this conversation with somebody on that same thread I was telling you about with the girl wearing the bonnet. This dude came at me super sideways. He's like, "Oh, so you just think you're transcendent above everything and all that? Like, get out of here! Like, you just think you're one of those Buddhist people." I'm like, "All right, well, I mean, you're from Virginia, and I've never met you in my life. So for you to make that assertion, it doesn't mean shit." But at the same time, it's just like when in that same time, like this guy who's responding out of hurt and seeing somebody who's responding out of being healed from everything, like it's just like he takes the assumption that like. Yo, like he like on his side, he probably saw the assumption of like, oh, like because you have this perspective, you're either a sellout, you're probably pro-Trump or this. It's just like, no,
right.
At the end of the day, I'm still black. I've been through some shit. Like, this is like, let's not get it twisted. Like, I've been through the same shit that you've been through. I've been pulled over by cops. Like, I've been patted down for like bullshit things. Like, I've like I've lived in the Midwest, which is like country. Like we have the country right to like 10 minutes away from us. Like I've experienced racism. I experienced the hurts and the trauma that comes with it. But at the same time, like I've also healed from it. Mm-hmm. And because I'm healed from it, I'm able to look at things in like more of an ambiguous sense, you know? So for those people who like get triggered and all that, I think it just leads to, again, like these people haven't like properly healed. Not to say that I'm still like in a healing process.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be a thing for the rest of my life while I'm living here. You know, it's just like it's not gonna be like it's not that a destination was reached. I think like it's always gonna be a journey. But I think like a lot of the people like who choose to like get triggered when somebody says they don't support Black Lives Matter, say like, oh, you're racist, this, and the other. Like it's an emotional trigger. Like it's funny, like I kind of really connected to. Have you ever heard of Eckhart Tolle?
No,
bruh, dopest fucking human being ever. Like his book A New Earth has been like my fucking Bible. Like that dude is fucking genius. But
it's called what? New Earth?
A New Earth.
Oh,
is what it's called.
Okay.
Like it's a fucking dope ass book. But he talks about in the book. He pretty much talks about how ego and emotion can like allow us to like be in a self that isn't ourselves. Like to kind of like be in live in a facade. And he was talking about how people have this thing called the pain body. Like it's pretty much like that muscle that makes you respond to something out of emotion, just pure emotion. Like in any moment, like the pain body could happen with a dude who gets at a red light and it's like, oh fuck, I'm so fucking mad. Like, and because of anger, like he probably goes to Walmart and is like, fuck you, fucking stupid fucking Walmart cashier. And that cashier, her pain body gets activated because this dude is on one, and then that happens. It's just like he's like.
Chain reaction.
Yeah, exactly. He talks about it and like describes it. And like one thing that he said that I thought was brilliant. I'm glad he like made this connection. He's like, a lot of people who have these pain bodies are usually activists because they're always quick to respond in emotion. Mm-hmm. They're quick to respond out of reactivity and not really thinking about the situation or even think about their feelings and how their feelings are like how they're triggered by what somebody said because of something that doesn't even have to do with that person or the situation. You know?
Yeah. There's actually. They can actually point out and trace personality traits in your brain, and you can actually determine whether somebody's more likely going to be left or right.
Really?
Right-minded. Like, if you are high... Molly, you probably know this more than I do. If you're higher in conscientiousness, you're more likely conservative. And if you're higher in open-mindedness, you're more likely...
That's dope. That makes a lot of sense.
I think narcissism has something to do with it, maybe, too.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow, I've never I want to look into that stuff.
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense though. Wow.
Yeah, you should check out Jordan Peterson.
I think Jordan Peterson's dope. I do like Jordan Peterson.
Cool.
I do like.
Cool. It. That's awesome to listen to. I don't know. His last book is kind of interesting. I was reading through some of the rules. And, what was it? Do not do what you hate. And I'm like, come on, that's just lazy. Like,
do not do what you hate. It's just like, yeah.
It sounds like kind of a late. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
I think the clown pen got to his head. Did you hear about him going to rehab?
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Yeah, I was making a joke. I think the clown pen.
Yeah.
That's some long-term effects on his brain.
It made it be simpler. It's like, hey, man, just don't do what you.
I can't, dude. I'm still like zonked out, man. I can't think that hard.
Just don't do what you hate. I was like, wow, my mom told me that last week too. Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Clean your bloody room.
Yeah. That is funny.
Oh god.
Oh man, Jordan's dope though.
Oh shit.
Yeah, but yeah, like it just having that like and that's kind of like been my criticism like of kind of activism of just like seeing how reactive it is. Like for me, like when I see
For either side.
for either side, like it's on either side, and that's why it's always like a cluster fucking mess when these people talk to each other because they don't talk; they're just yelling back and forth.
You.
It's like, are you attacking me? Are you attacking me? It's like, no, they're trying to have a fucking conversation. Like, just chill, man. Like, but it just comes out of like again like a knot there of like kind of like a trauma there or something that was just not kind of like picked, like was not kind of like recognized and kind of like worked through. Like for me, like I've worked through like a good amount of my shit. I still got a lot of shit to work on, but like because I worked a lot of shit, like whenever I get in those conversations now, like I'm not mad. I'm just like, man, like I want to understand why this person's thinking what they're thinking. I want to know their narrative. And like if like I have friends who I've had conversations with who said George Floyd deserved to get killed, and I'm like, okay. Why do you think that?
For real?
Why do you think that? And I'm like, yeah.
Shit.
And for me, like again to say that, like again for the people who hear that are triggered as well. Like I was triggered in that moment, but like I did. But the difference is like Eckhart Tolle talked about it. Like just because like you learn how to like not be controlled by emotions doesn't mean you don't feel emotions. Like in those when I have those conversations, like I feel like my palms get sweaty and I feel tense, but I recognize like okay, my palms are sweaty. I'm tense. I'm feeling anger. I don't need to lash out at them at anger. Let me just breathe real quick.
Wow.
And like have this conversation. So like those conversations still aren't easy, and like you're never transcended past them. You just know how to like kind of like play ball in those like situations, you know.
Well, I will say that's a really impressive. I don't know if I would have been able to. Like that's just such an outrageous thing. Like
yeah,
I've heard people argue some of what happened, and that's that's fine, whatever. But to say that he deserved. Die? That's horrible.
I just have to admit, I
don't think anybody would.
I come to grips that like a lot of people have just like made irrationality rational like in the US. So it's just like, man, like I just gotta understand that.
We saw that this last week.
Exactly.
Nobody has it.
Exactly. So I'm like, if I get mad at the irrationality instead of just like if I react to the irrationality instead of saying, okay, this is irrational, but let's try to like get this let's listen to what they're saying first and then try to kind of get them to a place of understanding. Because like the conversation I had with a specific person who brought that up, the conversation was like, it lasted 2 a.m. And mind you, like we were at the bar earlier. I was kind of tipsy already, so I'm already like, man.
That's
like,
one of those
conversation. But at the end of the conversation, when I like kind of like broke down to her like why the situation existed where he was like killed, and like what it looks like for me, and what it looks like and what it means when she justifies that, what it means in my case, she's like, wow, like I never thought about that. Thanks for like bringing that back. It's like I'm wrong and this is that and the other. I'm like, wow, like that's dope. Even though like we had to get through all this bullshit for the last 2 hours, I'm glad we got here to a point where you understand this small part. There's probably a lot of spaces of racism that you still got, but like you dealt with that one. Cool. Like 1 out of 9. Like meet you next Saturday after we leave the bar.
The most cliche term. I'm not racist. My sister's boyfriend has a best black friend. Shut the fuck up. You're not making yourself fucking.
Look at this though. That in turn is what kind of makes that one thing exist of like, don't be in interracial relationships, like and all that. Because like these people who use people as like scapegoats, saying like, hey, I'm not racist. My boyfriend's black, and like that's what again, like when you see how that fuels everything, like how it's just like people.
It's like Pac-Man says, it's a circle, man.
Circle. Yes, we were talking. Sometimes we run. Never goes. Sometimes the circles we run in just don't last. I remember.
Yeah,
I do remember it. I've listened to that song a bunch, but yeah, no, it really is a true thing though. Like once we understand the circle that's created, like kind of break ourselves from the circle and try to make a straight, progressive growing line, it's just like
it's difficult.
Yeah, it is. It's fucking difficult, man. It's not easy. I feel like I still kind of like deal with some of like the we'll call them circleisms. I like that word. Wow, circleisms. Damn. That's
next album.
Pac-Man, I didn't steal from your album. I'll have you on at least like 6 tracks.
There you go. There you go.
You can be on 6 tracks.
There we go.
Circleisms, but like yeah. Like I catch myself like getting mad about the same patterns that I've been getting mad about like forever, and like I still have to catch myself like, oh shit, like yesterday was one of those situations. Like I had a conversation with somebody and like I just got mad and shut myself down, and I was like, dang, I just shut myself down, Aubrey. Like you gotta understand, like this is a pattern you've been doing, and just break out of this shit. I know it's hard to say something, and I was like, you want to go get some food, man? Like, you know, just like, you know. So I still find myself breaking out of this. So it's not an easy thing, and I think that's why a lot of people jump into these activist roles, kind of like self-given roles, without focusing on themselves first. Because like the thing is, like it's work. Like if you're working on yourself and like trying to like get all that shit healed, that's not just a month or a day or a week thing. Like that's gonna be years, and like you're probably gonna withdraw yourself from this shit of just like even making comments about shit that's like triggering or makes you trigger somebody else. You know, it's work. People don't like that work, and I get it.
Yeah, it all takes time. It's all, you know, like I think I might have said this in the beginning of the episode. Like the only person you can really work on is yourself.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
At the end of the day.
Exactly.
We've been going for quite a while.
I was gonna say, man, like I'm good now. Like, I don't want to take up too much time. Like,
oh, you're good. I guess just let me ask you one last question.
What's that?
It's still early in the year, and we've already talked extensively about capital, and there's a lot of crazy shit going on. Mm. What do you think about this coming year, 2021? Do you think it's going to be better, worse? Do you have any thoughts?
Man, I think it's just going to be like for me. I just feel like
that's all we can do.
Like, it's just like, and I think it's always just so funny. Like it's funny like how the human brain works with some people. Like how like when this new year was coming, people were like crying out of happiness. Like we can do this
right.
2020. Yeah, 2021's going to be better. It's like first of all, like this whole idea of calendar and time is a man-made concept. Like, time's just gonna be like, oh, what's 2021? I guess we should stop doing traumatic shit that we don't all year. Like, shit don't happen like that. I think like you set yourself up for disappointment and just taking on more trauma when you try to like promise something that try to put so much certainty behind something that can't have that much certainty behind it. Like for me, like I fell into that. I fallen into that before. You know, like putting like hopes in like next month being better, next year being better. I'm like, man, like whatever this year like holds, like for me personally, I'm like, man, I've been through the trauma and shit that I needed to go through in 2020 to be able to like be like, if this happens in 2021, I'm gonna know how to observe it. Yeah. And I'm gonna learn how to like either pursue whatever the situation is to have a conversation or not. And at the protection of like my mental fortitude, you know. So like for me, I'm like, man, 2021 is gonna be what 2021 is gonna be like. I just gotta be able to like know how to respond, you know. Like I feel like with that said, I feel like this last year, 2020 was just kind of like for me, it was kind of like the training camp. Like, oh, we're gonna throw everything at you. Like, sit by yourself at home, murder, protests, burning targets. Yeah, raging right wing people. It's just like I faced all that. I was like, you know what? I've still learned how to like be cool in the midst of like because of this. Like I got my punches, I got the jabs and uppercuts to the face all 2020, and like now I know how to like, okay, you gonna hit me this time. Oh, you know, I got the spidey senses this year. So like I think my biggest thing is just like with whatever happens, like just not lose myself in the noise of it. And I think I mentioned that on my IG, you know, like whatever that happened at the Capitol, like it's just funny, like again, like we talked about earlier, but like people can't like would DM me or message me asking me like what I think about what's happening. It's just like, man, like I can't be your answer, but bro, like I don't know, like man, I got school to worry about, I got this happening in my corner, like I can't give you an answer right now. Like you can't always like come to me for an answer and all this that and the other. So
yeah, well, you know, man, I think people like us who can decipher things and be strong-headed are going to be people who prosper this year. So.
Man, I'm saying, yeah, man, it's just like we just got to be able to like spread that around a little bit, kind of like how folks did with religion. Yeah. Just like, man, look at the whole piece of pie. Like we just got to be able to pass it around.
How white people season their meat, just a little sprinkle,
just a little bit of cumin. No. Man,
I think in that aspect, working at a restaurant took the white out of me in that sense. Now I
Yeah, just do it now. Just seems as much as...
Like, that stereotype, I'm just like, no, I refuse to live by it. Fucking pouring the shit.
It's just like, it's too much, we'll learn later. Whatever.
Yeah, right.
We'll learn later.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
We ain't gonna put 1/4 of a tablespoon of cumin in here. Like, we need more than that. More chili powder, yeah.
For real.
It is funny.
Aubs, it's been a hell of a time, man. I'm
Yeah,
really
man.
glad you swung in and did this.
Yeah, man, I'm glad we did this. This is dope. This is super dope.
It's been a lot of fun. You're an intellectual person, and I always
I appreciate that kind of word, man. Yeah.
If you're ever in Des Moines, hit me up. We'll definitely hang, do some shit. And...
Bro, always, yeah.
Awesome.
We'll definitely, we'll definitely just have to like hang outside of just like
just the podcast.
Work. Yeah. So,
yeah, that's why the quick tangent. That always kind of sometimes ends up being the problem with me is I meet all these people every week, and I'm like you're a like what's the line between like being a podcast guest and like I can't hang out with everyone that I have on the podcast all the time.
Exactly. No, I get it. I definitely get it. Trust me.
But you're a cool guy, and
yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you having this podcast too, man. Like having like just various conversations with various creatives and all that, and just like letting it flow how we're flows. Because it's funny because like me being an artist, we didn't talk about anything art wise, and that's okay. Like,
yeah,
I'm glad that happened. Like it's cool to have podcasts where we can just do that. So I appreciate that, man.
I really do too. I feel like some people you can't really talk about that stuff with, and you are. So
oh yeah,
like
absolutely, yeah, man. I appreciate that.
Awesome. All right, everybody, have a good night. Peace out.
Peace.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening to today's episode. It was a great time with Aubs. As always, I hope to get him back on when maybe we have correct audio equipment working. Maybe we can have him live in the new studio. That's coming up in a few short months. Stay tuned on the 23rd. We're going to be live on YouTube for the more official start of the season. We have 4T Breezy on the show. He is a local rapper. He just got out of prison, and he has some very interesting stories to talk about. So it's going to be interesting talking to him. Other than that, I guess on a closing note, these are some really dark times we're in, but probably darker than we've seen in a while. But all we can do is hang in there and stick together. So, yeah, let's try to do that. All right. Adios.